And welcome to 307 Baseball. I'm Aaron Poling. That's Anthony and Elan Olive. Thank you so much for joining us today, as it is kind of a I don't want to say 4th of July special, but we understand it's the holidays, so we kind of left coaches alone to, it's holiday weekend, give them a break from us pestering them. So we're not going to have an interview for today's show, but we will still have our recap of the games that happened recently. We're also going to have we're going to talk about the rankings, where everyone ranks currently. We're also going to preview the upcoming matchups that will happen over the week. And we also have our 307 Baseball Coaches and Media poll, as it should still be a fun episode. As, I think we're going to throw a change up right off the bat, because you two were at the night invite, last week, and quite a few teams from Wyoming were able to make it out to that tournament. Go ahead and just discuss that real quick, as you got to see quite a few teams, and none of them were the Evanston team that we usually cover. It's a huge opportunity for you guys to see a lot of teams from around the state.
Yeah, and it was really it just kind of verified what I think you and I already kind of knew, is that Wyoming baseball is on the up. Like,
absolutely.
These teams that played, every single one of them kind of had that jaw-dropping moment. I know for me, personally, on the broadcast we went over who's our offensive player of the tournament, who's our defensive player of the tournament, pitcher of the tournament. I'm telling you right now, Brock Johnson's probably your offensive and pitcher of the tournament. He only pitched 2 innings in the tournament, but he shut down as you would expect. But what was impressive for him was on offense, 2 games, 7 RBIs on 2 homers, including the grand slam, of course. That was nuts.
Yeah, and just the competition level was insane throughout. There was close matchups throughout that tournament, and it seemed that no lead was safe for the most part. You could build up a three-run lead, and then all of a sudden the next team in the bottom half of the inning comes up and just destroys it.
That and the time limit really, I think, added a whole different thing. Yeah. You had teams kind of. There was one game where it looked like a team was kind of, not looked like they were meant to do it, but the way it worked out, this team kind of proverbially ran out the clock. Mm-hmm. It was really kind of interesting. I talked about offensive player of the tournament, pitcher of the tournament for me. Defensive player of the tournament, though, was Bracken Lale out of Green River. He made some big league plays. We're talking running and then throwing across his body, just firing darts over to first base. Just a great shortstop. I was really impressed with the bats that we saw from Jackson. I mean, that team can really hit. First time I've seen Green River in person, and every time we talked with the coach, they would say, man, they hit the ball very, very well and very, very hard.
Absolutely. As my players of the tournament, Elan kind of shared his, I'll share mine. My pitcher of the tournament is Derringer Holding from Jackson, had 12 strikeouts in one of his outings and got the win. My offensive player, Tegan Mortensen from Jackson, had a 2-run home run game, but also plenty of RBIs over the weekend. And then defensive player, we're going to go to one of the teams that are not from Wyoming, the Pocatello Razorbacks.
This is a good pick.
Dayton Polson, the third baseman for Pocatello, amazing job at the hot corner this weekend.
I thought you were going C-Rock from Lockwood.
No, I would go Dayton Polson from
C-Rock,
Pocatello.
He gets an honorable mention. He was incredibly good, that Lockwood, Montana shortstop. But it was really, really kind of fun. Game of the tournament for me, I thought it would be that Pal Cheyenne game. That Riverton Cheyenne game was great to end the tournament. Seeing Riverton come up with that 5-1 victory. Cheyenne had their chances. Kind of a reverse of what we saw the night before on Saturday night when Cheyenne and Green River played. That was another game where the scoreboard does not tell how close that game was. Green River had bases loaded twice, once with nobody down, and Cheyenne defense just locked down both times and held on.
Yeah, and I kind of have to agree with you about that game of the week and just that impressive performance in that last game of the day.
All right, so my player I'm just kidding. Unfortunately, I was not at the night invite, but I was at the Elko Basque Wood Tournament.
Basque.
No, it's Basque. I was.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure, because I got a lot of grief for saying it the way you guys said it, and people that are actually in the Basque in their ceremony that they'll have this weekend came up and corrected me. So
okay, then I guess I've been wrong for years.
I was gonna say hopefully they weren't just messing with me, which that Elko crew, they might be, but I think they were being pretty serious about that, as you say it, Basque. as in, bass, and that's how
Like a long A or
Yep.
short A, not a
I mean,
drawn
I don't
out A.
I don't know there, Mr. English teacher. I just know that it sounds like the word bass.
Mr. English teacher, you're funny.
But so that was an interesting tournament as well. A lot of only one Wyoming team, and that was Evanston, and Evanston had, I would say, a pretty good tournament against some good competition, and they ended up finishing 3-2. They lost to the Pocatello Running Rebels, who were, in the Northwest Regional last year, and a very good team, and they're looking to get back there. So nothing to hang your head about that. They had one get away from them, but there was a time in the tournament where the Outlaws scored runs in 11 straight innings. This spans from the first game where they scored in the fourth inning, were able to tack on runs in the next 3 innings. They scored all six of their innings against Gooding, and then they scored in the first 4 innings against Spring Creek, and just an impressive run there. And that doesn't even quantify what Gavin Oliver himself did. Gavin Oliver had 9 RBIs in the first 2 games, and then he had a streak where 11 straight plate appearances ended with him reaching base safely, 10 straight at-bats where he got a hit.
Well, and when you talk about that 11-inning streak, we're not talking like they scratched across a run or two. From what I saw, there were some, more often than not, these were some crooked numbers.
Yeah, I was going to say, they put up more. I think it was, when we did the math, it was more crooked numbers. 6 times they put up crooked numbers. 4 times they only put up 1. So, I mean, the Evanston Outlaws offense really showed up. And, with the wood bat, we talked about it being the great equalizer.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't really seem like it equalized much for the first 3 days for the Outlaws.
So
they seemed like they crushed the ball with the wood bat.
We don't want to turn this into an Evanston show, but we are. That is our guys, right?
Yeah.
I got to ask. The hitting is coming along. We're starting to see the pitching. Is this team rounding out in form just in time for the playoffs, according to what you're seeing right now?
They're playing much better. They're playing much better baseball than they did at the beginning of the year. There are still things that in a long tournament that you're going to have question marks. I think they're going to have to find other arms to fill in some of those games. But I think they're coming along. They're playing much better baseball than they were at the beginning of the year. You think about earlier in the season, they played Riverton 5 times. Riverton is 5-0 against Evanston.
Mm-hmm.
And would Riverton still beat Evanston now? That's a question that maybe we'll see at the district tournament. We'll be able to answer that question. But, I think that Evanston has continuously got better, but that's not to say other teams around the state. They aren't on the same trajectory of, early season then getting better throughout the year. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I think a lot of that single A district, the West District for sure, is really going to depend on which teams just have a good weekend, because there are, I think, probably 6 teams in that district alone that we could pencil them into state, and I don't think there'd be any issue.
So I've kind of got it down here. So I think there are 4 teams competing for 2 spots because Powell's automatically in because they're hosting state, right? Yep. And I don't think Cody's going to miss.
Yep.
So I think you've got Riverton, Green River, Lovell, Evanston competing for those final 2 spots.
Yeah,
and all 4 of those teams deserve to be at state.
Yeah, all 4 of those teams are very good.
That's the thing, is 2 teams are going to miss that could have easily gone on a deep run in that tournament.
And that's kind of why I say it's going to depend on who shows up that weekend, because it's going to be a grind throughout that weekend. It's going to be a great tournament, I think, for that reason, just because there are a lot of teams that, maybe last year we kind of looked at it and maybe it was 5 teams that we could pick from that we're going to take the 4 spots, and adding Riverton this year, the 6 and 8, and who's to say maybe Rollins doesn't get hot with a couple of pitchers.
Yeah.
And, you never really know when it comes to tournament play. It's all about showing up. But I do think that Evanston is playing better baseball, but I also think a lot of teams around the state are playing better baseball as the season progresses too.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead and go to some of the past results, as we're going to start with Monday the 1st. As we had a couple conference games, as Casper, the Drillers, and the Gillette Rustlers in single A, they go ahead and they split a doubleheader. Casper wins 11-5 game 1. Gillette wins 12-1 game 2. What's some of your reactions to that? Because, I mean, that just kind of shows that we talked about on the East over there, it's kind of no one's out of the race yet.
No.
And if you're able to put together a good doubleheader and get a split, or not a split, get a sweep, you're kind of putting yourself in position to really take hold and give yourself an opportunity, as that East has been very interesting all year.
Well, especially since they're not going to have a district tournament. They're going to have a best out of 3 series to determine who their 4 going is going to be. So your seeding right now is vital, because
Absolutely.
you want the best matchup possible. And I'm not with only 7 teams there. I'm not sure if the one automatically gets a bye or how that works, but these regular season games matter more than the regular season games for the West because the West has that district tournament.
Yeah.
But this is going to determine what your one opponent is going to be. And
also, I think more importantly, home field advantage. You'd much rather play at home than say if you're Buffalo, you don't want to have to go to Laramie. That's just an example because it's the next game that popped up.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where is home field advantage more important than opponent? I think also at the same time, if you're getting home field advantage, you're probably playing an opponent that in the standings is quote unquote not as good as you. But in a 3-game series, we know anything can happen.
But at the same time, you are going to have the 4-5. You're going to have those ones that are super duper close. I mean, I think these conference games matter a whole lot. And for Gillette and Casper to kind of split there, it just kind of means we're at 6s with the East.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And something I want to add is that this is going to be a 3 games. Those are going to be 3-game series to determine the state picture. These are double headers.
Yep.
So theoretically, these teams could use these conference double headers as kind of a practice saying, hey, we split. Theoretically, say we played this team to determine if we go to state or not. Now we got to get ready for that matchup.
Well, and look at the scores from this doubleheader. None of them were you would call close games. So if I'm the manager of these two teams and this is the matchup I get, if it is, I mean, I'm not saying it is because I think they're kind of on the same side of the rankings. Yeah. But when you match up in these doubleheaders against teams that you could be potentially facing, it really gives you a barometer of like, okay, because both teams, no matter what team it is, they're going to want to win this thing in 2. They're going to want to save pitching for state. They're not going to want to have to dig past their number 2 guy. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it gives you a barometer of how close you are to accomplishing that goal. When it comes to these two teams, I would say those are really interesting scores.
Yeah, currently 1-4 in the rankings right now.
Yeah.
As those rankings were updated last on July 1st. So I think those rankings were updated before this game. But I think Casper, with that one loss, they still do stay at the top of the rankings. And I think it brings up a lot of strategy just because, say you win game 1. Game 2's getting away from you right away.
Yep.
Do you bring in, the rest of your arms to try to manufacture and try to save game 2? Or do you kind of say, hey, kind of like what Powell did last year with the Cody game? And the only reason why we know this, we talked to Coach Borders where he was kind of, we got another one, let's just reset and get ready for tomorrow and do it that way. It's going to bring a lot of interesting strategy into arms and also into offense. I mean,
well, and then at the same time, you also have to, I mean, when you're in that game 3 situation, you're going all out.
Yeah.
But when you're in that game 2, game 1 situation,
depending on how you did the first game.
Yeah. You do have to keep in mind, all right, the state tournament starts this day. I want this guy, because everybody wants to have their number 1 available for the first round.
Yes.
Everyone wants to have that guy, their dude available for the first round. Because winning that first round is pivotal to winning a state championship. Very rarely do we see someone go out in the first round and work their way back. That does not happen very often at all. So winning that first round and being one of the final 4 on the winner's bracket is pivotal. So you also have to manage with that in mind. But at the same time, it's like if you don't win this game, if you lost game 1, it goes out the window. If you're in game 3, that goes out the window because the number one thing is you got to get past this series.
And tournaments are awesome, but I think there's something to playing a team twice with your season on the line where it's basically, I don't want to say a double header for you to go to state, but it kind of almost becomes that if you can sweep, you kind of get to really know the opposition and how do we pitch to this guy? How do I pitch to that guy? Where should we play defensively when this guy's up? Is he going to pull it every time or is he going to slap it down the right field line? I think there's so much strategy that you can really pick up and gain from when you play a team twice that I really like that. I mean, obviously tournaments have their place.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a reason that tournaments are the reason that we do things this way, but I think this is just an interesting format that I really enjoy.
I'm not harmed by it at all. I think it's going to be fascinating to see how some of these games and some of these series kind of work out. At the same time, I'm also really excited to go to the district tournament.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be just high pressure. I mean, last year going into the Western District Tournament, like you said, we had an idea of what was happening. We had an idea where the collision course was. We have zero idea this year.
Absolutely.
It's going to be so fascinating.
And that's kind of one of the things that happens when you have an odd numbers. You get one way is going to go on this side versus another way, and I'm excited to see. I like that variety a little bit. Anthony?
Yeah, I like that variety as well, just backing up what you're saying. Yeah.
So another single A East doubleheader that happened on Tuesday, July 2nd. The Laramie Rangers single A team beat the Buffalo Bulls in a doubleheader twice, 11-8 and 12-11, as those were some pretty competitive ball games there between Laramie and Buffalo.
You know, Laramie in that Green River tournament, if you were to award maybe like a most improved team award, you would give it to Laramie because they had a tough draw their first night, but man, they have got stronger every day, and they even eventually ended it with a win over I can't remember.
Was it?
Or did they?
No, they ended the tournament with a win.
Yeah.
Yes.
Was it over Jackson? No, Jackson was who they played the first day, and they lost to them. Because I remember joking around with Huggins about, hey, you guys just can't get rid of Laramie, can you? On that first day. But
that's kind of a microcosm of the entire season for that Laramie single A team, which you make that jump from B to A. It's not easy. We talked to their manager, Chris Woods, a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, and just learning about like the difference, the speed of the game, and I think this Laramie team, they're adjusting and they're starting to play some of their better ball going down the stretch towards the end of the season, and they're going to put themselves in a situation where they have an opportunity to make it to the state tournament in their first year at single A. So I mean, kudos to them for sticking with it, because early on in the season for them it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, as we talked to Coach Woods, and they've gotten better throughout the year.
Definitely, for sure. And just seeing the improvements of the Green River tournament by this single A Laramie side is huge. And just like those two scores right there, sweeping Buffalo, 11-8 and 12-11. Those are huge wins.
I'm going to pull up their scores from the night invite, because I think you kind of see, looking at their scores, just kind of the uphill trajectory that they were on throughout that week. Give me 1 second. Here it is. So at the night invite, they played Jackson first, and they lost that one. Final score was 11-2, but Jackson, again, a double-A squad. Then they played Green River the next night, and Green River had a really good performance on night one, so I think a lot of people tapped Green River to be one of the top teams of the tournament, and they were. But this is where things kind of started to switch for them. They end up tying Green River because of the time limit at 3-3. And then their biggest win of the tournament and the last one of the tournament, they played that Riverton squad we were talking about, beat them 7-2. And that, you and I both know, that Riverton squad is no pushovers.
Yeah.
If you can get on the diamond with them and beat them 7-2, that is huge. It was helped out an awful lot by a great pitching performance by Quade Gill. He went 3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 run, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts. But the big thing is none that run wasn't earned. And he threw a really, really, really consistent strike zone. 31 of his 53 pitches landed in the zone.
Let's go ahead and move on to a single A West doubleheader that happened yesterday, Powell versus Riverton, as Powell was able to sweep 10-1 and 16-14 as the Raiders. They kind of had a really good showing in that second game. That second game, kind of looking into the kind of the write-up that they had, Riverton scored 11 runs in the second inning. Powell scored the next 10 runs and held on, as that seems like that was just a wild affair there between Powell and Riverton, which is kind of what we talked about all year with that Northwest District up there.
Yeah, Brock Johnson goes 3 for 5 with 4 runs, 3 RBIs in that game. You were talking that second game. And then you got Cade Queen. He goes 3 for 4 with 3 runs scored and 4 RBIs. And they're able to get the win. They pitched that one by committee. Powell used 4 pitchers: Greenwald, Schwann, Worstel, and then Johnson closed it out. 2/3 of an inning pitch, 2 strikeouts, as you would expect. But man, 13 runs, 11 of them put up in the second inning by Riverton. They had an 11-6 lead at one point in this game, and Powell just slowly chipping away. And I think that's the sign of a team that's kind of been there, done that.
Yeah, I was going to say Powell's not going to flinch at any deficit they've been behind. But that Riverton offense, they're good. They are really, really good. I've watched, and we talked about my time seeing them is playing Evanston.
Mm-hmm.
They put up 18 hits in a game against the Outlaws.
Yeah.
And I don't think very many of them were cheap. They were all hard line drives. That Riverton offense, if they get rolling, they can mash.
Well, and let's be honest with this Powell team. They've got a great pitching core. Riverton puts up 10 hits against them.
Mm-hmm. And also, you just look at that Northwest. All four of those offenses, Powell, Cody, Riverton, and Level, all very high-powered offenses that can get it going in a bottom or a top half of an inning and just ride that wave all the way to victory most of the times.
Final conference game that we have is a single A East. Torrington Tigers and the Casper Drillers split 3-2. Torrington wins the first game. Casper wins the second game 8-3. As that is a split between those teams. That's going to lead us to our standings over on the single A East, as I think these were put up before the games were. So we will go ahead and kind of put 2 and 2 together, as Casper would now be 6-2, as they are in first place. Sheridan Jets are 9-3 in conference. Douglas Cats 7-3 in conference. Gillette Rustlers, I believe this would make them 8-4. And you move along to Torrington, who would be now 7-4. Cheyenne Eagles are 3-6. Both of those last two teams have a rainout, which I think is probably going to be against each other. Mm-hmm. So that game's still going to have to factor in. Wheatland Lobos 2-8. Buffalo Bulls 1-5. Laramie Rangers, or make for that, Buffalo Bulls now 1-7. Laramie Rangers now 2-8. So Laramie will jump Buffalo in that part of the standings. Let's go ahead and move along to the Single A West. Single A Northwest, as the Cody Cubs currently sit with a 6-2 record. Lovell Mustangs currently 5-3. I believe Powell would pull even with them at 5-3 after the doubleheader split, and Riverton sits at 0-8, as it's kind of a tough draw over there in the Northwest that we've talked about all year. Evanston Outlaws in the Southwest, they sit at 8-0. As the Green River Knights 6-2, Rollins Bandits and Saratoga Cutthroats are both 1-7. As we'll move back to the Double-A, Casper Oilers are sitting in first place, 10-2. Cheyenne Sixers are even with them in the loss column at 8-2. Gillette Rough Riders 6-4. Cheyenne Hawks 6-6. Sheridan Troopers 2-2. Laramie Rangers 2-4. Jackson Giants 0-6. Rock Spring Stallions 0-8. As there is still a lot left to be determined throughout the entirety of the season. In fact, we actually have a preview of some of the conference games coming up, as Anthony Colasino has that for us.
Yes. So today, Wednesday, July the 3rd, Buffalo will take on the Cheyenne Eagles. And then we have one on the Double-A side. Sheridan will take on Laramie.
Nice.
And then Friday, Cody will take on Riverton. Saturday, Casper takes on Cheyenne in a single-A matchup, the Drillers versus the Eagles. And then Sunday, the Laramie single-A side will take on the Casper Drillers.
That's a big weekend there for Casper, as you have back-to-back doubleheaders with a couple of teams trying to chase you down. So, I mean, these doubleheaders coming up, they are super important, as we still have a ton left to figure out with seeding. And, some conferences it's going to be a little more important than it is others, but you always want to finish with the highest seed possible.
And again, I'm not sure what happens to the 1 seed on the East, but if it is one of those deals where one gets a buy-in, Casper, this is a chance to really kind of put your foot down on that one if you can take care of these.
Yeah, you go 4-0 over the weekend. You almost, I don't want to say solidify, but you put yourself in the driver's seat of that number 1 seed.
And it's always, great to be that number 1 seed, but when you go into districts and the state tournament, you're going to have to kind of, prove that you're the number 1, because everyone's going to be wanting to knock off that top team.
Absolutely. Speaking of top teams, we have our 307 coaches in media poll, as we'll get to that right now. Do you guys want to start Double-A or Single-A?
Let's go Double-A first.
Let's go Double-A. So, starting off at number 5, receiving, if I could read my own handwriting, there we go, receiving 5 votes, it is the Cheyenne Hawks. At number 6, it is the Gillette Riders. They received 6 votes. Sheridan Troopers come in at number 3, as they received 10 votes. Casper comes in at 17. Casper comes in at number 2, receiving 17 votes. It'd be real tough in an 18 conference coming at 17. That's my fault. Sorry about that. And then, of course, Cheyenne at number 1, receiving 19 votes. As Casper this poll, they received a first-place vote. And, they're sitting number 1 in the rankings, and I feel, why not?
Yeah.
What's your guys' initial reactions to seeing this week's poll for the AA?
I got to double-check the schedule, but I want to know when Casper and Cheyenne are playing in that doubleheader.
Absolutely.
Give me 1 second. I will have that in a minute.
For me, the Hawks. Just the amount of growth they've had in their program from last year to this year. I mean, last year they kind of got tossed into a blender and, hey, you guys are now a AA baseball team. Let's go figure it out on the fly. They're able to pull off some wins, but unfortunately for them in the tournament, they ran into the post-6 Sixers. And, sometimes when the I don't want to say the big AA team, but when the Sixers play the Hawks, that's kind of an age thing where you expect the Sixers to win that one. But the Hawks, they've gotten better and better and better, and now they're sitting at number 5 in our coaches and media poll, and they're continuing to get better throughout the season.
Yeah, I was going to tie in with what you said about the Hawks, but looking at top with Casper and Cheyenne, you can see that gap in the voting just get a little bit more closer throughout. That's going to be a great matchup later on in the season when that does occur.
Tuesday, July 23rd.
There's your answer right there.
At Powers Field.
That's going to be a fun doubleheader, and it seems like a lot's going to be on the line in that doubleheader. It's going to be a great one for sure. Let's go ahead and move along to the single A.
Actually, if I'm not mistaken, that might be the final regular season games of the season for the entire state. It happens 6 days before the AA tournament.
So that sounds about right because districts are districts are the week before AA state tournament starts. The 26th as we're looking at our schedule over on our big whiteboard. As that whiteboard's actually not as full as it once was. That whiteboard was once completely full with all the stuff we were doing over the summer. It's kind of a relief seeing that. As we don't want to wish time away, but we've really grinded through the summer, and we're kind of glad to see that postseason baseball is right around the corner. But who will be the number 1 team in the AA, or make that the single A coaches and media poll? At number 5, we have a 3-way tie.
Wow. So that means we're going to have 7 teams in the top 5?
Yeah, I mean, technically. Evanston, I guess that's how that works. Evanston, Torrington, and Cheyenne all came in with 3 votes. The Gillette comes in at number 4, as they have 4 votes. Casper comes in at number 3 with 15. Cody at number 2 with 21. And then Powell at number 1 with 23. And with those numbers, Cody, they get themselves a first-place vote this time through. Casper gets himself a second-place vote, as Powell was all first place except for 1 vote where they had him third. Instant reaction?
Kind of stunned about the 3 in the 5 spot.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way. More like this thing. I think it really kind of shows what you and I were talking about, how tight the single A is getting right now.
It's competitive. Super, super competitive.
And it's only going to get more competitive towards the end of the season and into districts as well down in Green River.
And let's be honest, if Evanston right now, they are 8-0 in conference play. If they finish conference play perfect, that's going to pick up some attention.
Absolutely.
That's going to pick up some attention. I don't know if it picks up top 5 in the state type attention, but it's going to draw attention. They're going to have a target on their back at the regional or at the district tournament.
Yeah, and especially as a 1 seed, coming in as a 1 seed, you're always teams are always going to want to beat you because you're the 1 seed. It's just kind of how human nature is. If you're quote unquote by seeding the best, like we want to beat you.
Yeah,
and obviously when we get to the tournament, everyone's going to want to beat each other.
Was Lovell in that top 5?
Lovell received votes.
Lovell received votes, yes.
I think that's the one that's a little bit shocking to me because as we sit right now, Lovell does have. I mean, they lost to a couple to I think Cody over the weekend. So I definitely understand Cody being in there, but Lovell not being in there, I think is a little bit of a surprise to me.
Lovell received 1 vote. Green River received a vote. On the AA side, receiving votes as well was Laramie, as they didn't quite make the top 5 as they were 1 vote off. And even to get into the top 5, it seems like the races are closer. I mean, we've tallied these things up throughout the entirety of the season, and it just seems like each week kind of narrows the gap a little bit on who gets into the top 5, and then the top 2 teams on both sides. That's starting to narrow a bit too.
So there's some. Sorry, go ahead.
With the media poll, I think coaches and media are watching all the baseball a lot more closely and starting to add it up now. All right, which teams are hot, which teams are falling off, or just a little bit through a cold snap right now, and you're seeing that that gap close ever so slightly week by week.
Well,
go ahead.
I'm looking at the schedule right now. The AA Northwest is going to be decided next week, Thursday the 11th through Saturday the 13th. On Thursday the 11th, Powell and Lovell play their final doubleheader. And then on Saturday the 13th, Powell and Cody play their final doubleheader. That is going to be days that is going to make some massive decisions.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a big week for the Pioneers is, Lovell, they've played pretty good baseball throughout the year, too. I think they've beaten Powell, in fact, already this year. So, Lovell, they're going to want to show that wasn't a fluke, and they're going to want to try to earn that 1 seed as well. Lovell has had themselves a really good season. And of course, only 5 teams make this poll, so just because you're not on the poll doesn't mean you haven't had a great season. It's kind of more of a week-by-week snapshot of who's playing the best.
Yeah. And, with the numbers that Evanston's put up, like we talked about, I'm pleasantly surprised they're in the poll. I didn't think they would make it, but I think they absolutely deserve it after what they've pulled off lately.
This has been 307 Baseball. I'm Aaron Poling.
Anthony Colasuno.
Elan Olive.
We want to thank you for joining us. We apologize that we didn't get an interview, but with it being the week of the 4th of July, we still wanted to get a podcast out for you guys, and we hope that going a little more in depth into the games and also into the standings, we hope that you guys enjoyed that as much as you enjoy hearing some of the coaches and their personalities, and getting to hear our personalities a little bit more, which I think you guys would probably rather hear the coaches, to be completely honest. But that's all right. So we want to thank you guys for tuning in, and until next time, everyone, have a great 4th of July, have a safe 4th of July, and hopefully we'll hear from everyone next week.